All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning discussion. I am Mark Sudduth. Good to have you with me. Not expecting a very big crowd today because, hey, it's not hurricane season. And so interest in a channel called Hurricane Track certainly starts to wane, but we're still here. We do all kinds of stuff in the off season and into winter and spring severe. We're not going anywhere. So I'm going to talk about that towards the end. But let's see. Let's check in and see who's here. A little bit of roll call action as the classroom or lecture hall. Today it's going to be a classroom. I don't know if it's going to be a lecture hall. Not going to have a lot of folks, right? Um, so who we got? So far we got cheese grits. That's making me hungry. Haven't had breakfast yet. And we have Derek and we have Scott and then a few others just kind of lurking and watching. And we have Tanya on there. That's super. So on the agenda today, go back to where we can see me. There we go. Um, Take a recap of the hurricane season and some of the hits and misses with it, um, some of the stats, things like that. Lots of maps for you today, and just kind of reflecting. Nothing too deep, nothing too analytical, just a brief, kind of broad brush overview of it, and some really interesting posts on social media from people that have put together some different stats and whatnot and then kind of go from there. A few thoughts that I've got about how to approach things going forward and maybe where we are in the Atlantic basin, in terms of is this just going to keep happening or we're just going to have these busy seasons permanently, with the exception of sometime if the Atlantic ever calms or cools down, sorry. I got to get the engine going this morning. It's cold, by the way. It's was in the upper 20s last night here in Wilmington. And also, by the way, I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, in case uh, you guys didn't know that. But yeah, just kind of reflecting on the hurricane season, um, what I'm thinking about for next year. Not so much like, what do you think the season's going to be like? I mean, I don't want to say who cares because we all care, but I don't know. I mean, it's December right now. I do know what we will be looking for, and I also have some ideas, I think, on how to communicate things better, um, and serve the public better with actionable information. And everything's always changing. It's always morphing as we learn and apply what we've learned to future seasons. So we'll take a look at that as well. And then a little bit of a peek into what to expect next year, what to look for, sort of keys to the game. And then I'm going to end it today with an outline of what all we're going to be doing here at the Hurricane Track community over the next several months leading up to next June, when, of course, hurricane season begins again. We have less than 6 months. Look at it that way. I know, pleasant, right? But it's great to have you with me, and a huge thank you to everybody that followed along this hurricane season and all the ones in the past. We've been on YouTube since 2006, and recently, I say recently, going back to 2017, I think we started doing live, and that was difficult. These days, it's easy. Anybody can do it. And what a world, what an amazing thing that social media can be if you just know how to utilize it, and hopefully make good of it, right? So while I've just been kind of yammering there, let's see if we've gotten some other folks to join in. Oh, yeah, up to 26. That would fill a normal public school classroom, wouldn't it? And private school, right? Anyway, so we got Jupiter Saturn, CJ, one of our back end folks and creator of many a graphic and ride along companion. Appreciate that. And gaming with TR Trip and H1. I like that. Um, so I will read some of these posts, these comments in just a little bit. Since we don't have 1,000 people watching, I can kind of keep up with it and not get lost. So let's go back and share the screen. I want to make sure I get all this correct today. All right, so there's the screen. Boom. We see the YouTube feed. There's the title card. All right, let's get started. Let's wrap up the season and just take a look back. We'll use Wikipedia as a good guidepost for a lot of this here. I don't know who curates this particular page and who the authors are. Maybe it says it at the end. I don't know, but it seems pretty good to me. I didn't see anything that was wrong with what I was reading earlier. Um, but I like the first paragraph. It really sums it up well. The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season was an extremely active and devastating Atlantic season that had the second costliest. It was the second costliest on record, over $220 billion in damage, and more important than that, 400 deaths at least overall, most of which came from Beryl, Helene, and Milton, of course. We had 18 named storms, and that certainly fell short of the total named storms. We're going to look at that more in a minute. But 11 developed into hurricanes, 5 into majors, and the season ace-wise was hyperactive at 161.6 units. I think this will actually go up a little bit more in the postseason analysis as the Hurricane Center specialists go back and analyze everything with a magnifying glass and a microscope, basically. And so this is the biggest ACE year we've had since 2020. That's important to note as well. And we didn't have anything in the early part of it, like outside of the season. Nothing in May, and so far nothing in December. So everything was in that 6 month period. Alberto formed on June 19th, and that's the latest first name storm since 2014. Strange year. We should have known with all the warm water that was out there, all these experts forecasting stuff, whatever. I mean, we all saw it. We were all anticipating we're probably going to get started in May. Nope. It waited until almost the last third of June, and that was with a big, large gyre, basically, that was Alberto. And then, boy, after that, of course, things got really interesting with Beryl and so forth and so on. All right. So, a couple things to note here. Where did I see this? I was doing my homework earlier. Yeah. So, December 11th, 2023, TSR, that's Tropical Storm Risk, the UK firm group, whatever you want to call them. I mean, come on, from December, basically a year ago, they did pretty good if you really think about it. Calling for 20 name storms, we had 18. And boy, oh boy, there's a couple of them that I would argue strongly were also named storms that didn't make it. And maybe they get added later. It's easier to add than take away. And then 9 hurricanes, they were a little low. We had 11. And then 4. I mean, these are some really good forecast numbers right here if you think about it. Seriously, from that far out. Then Colorado State University, I mean, you talk about, again, the name storm part, it matters, but a lot of those in past years are a little short-lived, whatever. A couple of them, I mean, we could make the argument that we had 20 this year easily and, present that and look at some of these that didn't get upgraded. That's close. But Colorado State nailed it for the amount of hurricanes and the amount of majors back on April the 4th. That's Dr. Klotzbach and his group. And some of these, I don't know who they are. I don't know who MFM is. TSR held theirs, and they also nailed it by April. So April really gave us the idea that we were going to have a really active season. Um, University of Pennsylvania, I'm not even just didn't no good. Didn't do well at all. Way over forecast. I don't know why. We're not even gonna whatever. UK Met Office issued theirs in May. 22 name storms, darn close. So overall the numbers from the sources that we're used to seeing did a really good job. Now CSU by the time we got to July, because Beryl sort of, spooked us thinking, oh, here we go. This could be really bad. Upped it to 25, 12, and 6. That was an overachiever forecast there. Same thing with TSR and so forth. But in the end, overall, the seasonal predictions were very good. That it would be a hyperactive season, extremely busy, potentially historic, all of that. seemed to come to fruition, except just a couple named storms weren't there when it was all said and done. So the good thing is Colorado State does a verification, which is important because you can just throw numbers out there and then walk away. We call that crap posting and substitute crap for another word, right? And I don't like it when people do that. I think it's not helpful. You just say stuff and then walk away. And some people, prominent people, do that up on the social media, and yuck. I just don't like it. And so they've been keeping up with this stuff for decades now. The scientific method fully at play, so you can read about it here. I'll put the link to this when I'm done with today's update. But overall, the idea of the season being very, very busy, um, that first one there in April, that was darn good. And then, they kind of jumped the gun a little bit, thinking because of Beryl that we were going to really be in for one of those 2005, 2020 type seasons with way more named storms. But it was the hurricanes that got us, right? Absolutely. Starting with Beryl and then Debbie and right on through Ernesto out there. It was a big season. Now, look, uh, I want to I want to call this out because I think it's important. All right. I remember this, and I promised that I was going to revisit this on November 30th. Well, today's December 2nd. November 30th, the end of the season is come and gone. I posted a video here. This is the YouTube studios. This is what I see. Extraordinary hurricane season possible according to NOAA Outlook. And that's a pretty reasonable headline. I didn't say anything outrageous. My thumbnail wasn't frightening and, come on, whatever. And I don't know who this person is. I just thought it was interesting, and I said I am going to revisit this. Here we go with the fear mongering. Hyperactive, I highly doubt it. Climate change is a pile of BS. So let's unpack this just for a minute. I'm going to come off the screen share. All right. So, wrong. It was hyperactive. I got to get rid of my telestration. There we go. A few named storms didn't happen, but everything else did. It was historic. It was extraordinary. Um, just saying. I said I would revisit it on November 30th, and here we are, December 2nd. It's hurricane season's over. But what I don't understand is when people are just putting information out there. Now, I totally get it when you get these thumbnails and these headlines that are just everything is a five-alarm fire, and that gets very annoying. But I thought that headline was pretty tame, extraordinary season possible. That's what I said. And then the thumbnail was just text. There was no, yeah, you see those triangles with an explanation point in it. You guys have seen them. You know what I'm talking about. So what exactly is fear mongering anyway? I don't know. Like if someone says there's some storms coming, and severe weather possible, I don't know. Sometime I got to talk to a psychologist or get them on one of my Hurricane U episodes, or a psychiatrist or somebody in the mental health field to explain what does that mean. People want to know stuff, right? And then when you tell them the stuff, and now look, I realize that person is probably in the teeny tiny little minority of just troll, angry at the world. I get it. I don't expend a lot of time on it, believe me. And luckily on our YouTube channel and on elsewhere on our social media, our negativity is just minuscule. It is not even 1%, because we typically don't do anything controversial. I'm just me and I just do what I do. But I thought it was interesting that that person said that, with no data to back it up. You just throw stuff out there. What I was talking about earlier, that crap posting. And so you can post crap like that where somebody will have an outrageous thumbnail and an outrageous headline, a bold statement, and then you can have sort of crap comments where people just say something back and there's no basis to it at all. And so that person ended up being wrong. It was hyperactive. It was devastating. We're at the number two costliest of all time. Might even get up to number one as all the damage stuff comes in. hundreds of deaths. I mean, I think fear mongering, sometimes you have to really raise those alarms. And this was one of those seasons. We needed people to pay attention, because there was so much else going on. There's all this noise in our lives all the time, and it's right on I mean, I'm over here looking at my phone. There's freaking phone calls are coming in. By the way, we can create AI generated whatever, right? In like 20 seconds, I can create an AI generated hit song using Suno, but you can't stop those spam calls from coming in. Seriously? Like, come on. I just need to turn the phone over. There's my case in point. We're distracted by so much, and I always just get like curious, not necessarily bent out of shape and offended, but why do people say that? You post something that's supposed to be helpful, and they come back with those two words, fear mongering. And they end up being wrong most of the time. And again, there are people out there that put stuff up on a daily basis. And it's like, we talked about this last week. It's the end of the world as we know it every day. Everything they post. And I don't even just know. So, anyway, season was exactly what we thought it would be in terms of the scope of impact, minus a few name storms. All right. Other than that, this was a big fail, and the experts were correct. It was not fear mongering. I wish I had shouted louder, especially when it came to Helene. I did the best I could, and other people as well, to let especially Western North Carolina. That's what I'm talking about. That area. Um, I mean, geez, you want to see fearful? Go up there. Go visit those folks and see. Maybe there should have been more fear mongering. All right. Ben Knoll now lives in the United States, which is a good thing. I mean, nothing against New Zealand, but now he's closer and he's not 13 hours time zone removed. And he's living up in the Washington, D.C. area, if I remember correctly. And this was really interesting. He posts these maps for us each spring, these blends, the super blends, and the models early on did a pretty good job at showing where the activity would be. I mean, these are still in their infancy when you think about it. And this is a pretty good job. I'm trying to figure out a color that will help, I guess, purple here. We did have a clustering right out here, and then we had a big clustering over here. Nothing came up the East Coast. That was a big fat blank there. But this was pretty good overall. The modeling early on indicating these ensembles where the tracks would be this year. And what the models didn't get, though, was that complete dead zone. And we'll talk about that. We'll get there. So, really appreciate when Ben puts those out. And we'll see what happens for 2025, right? But the models did a pretty good job. Again, we're making progress. This stuff is still so young when you think about, the age of the Earth. And I know that's totally hyperbolic. We're talking billions of years. But even in just the last 1,000 years, look at what we've accomplished with technology and numerical weather forecasting in just the last 20. That's amazing. And it's just going to get better, hopefully. All right. All right. So another great post here. And Andrew, one of our supporters, good friend of ours that we've gotten to know over on our Patreon and on our Discord. And hopefully I get to meet Andrew in Tulsa this coming spring as we get out for spring severe weather. We'll talk about that later. But just great info out here. And I love these. This is from the seasonalhurricanepredictions.org or whatever the site was, kind of highlighting the spread of all the different forecasts that were made. The average of the predictions was 22 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and 5 majors, and an ace of 211. So overall, that's pretty darn good. The ace missed it by, the average there, obviously by about, 50 points, if math serves me. 50-point deficit. Yeah, right there. But that is because of the missing hurricanes in the middle of the season. And we don't really know what the heck caused that. We know what happened, but we don't know why it happened. People are working on it. Why did all that stability happen and so forth? There's not one thing you can pin that on. But that was, a weird moment that yanked a bunch of that ace out of there. That you're not going to make that up, which is good because it was already bad enough, right? Other stats, and Andrew puts together these really cool infographics, and Helene there knocking on the door. I mean, it's in the top three. That just shows you how devastating the season was. Katrina, Harvey tied at one. I mean, Helene basically is tied for number two if you think about it, right? And then the seasons not adjusted for inflation. 2024 knocking on the door there. It's going to be hard to top 2017, which is fine with everybody, I'm sure, but just goes to show you, yes, we saw this coming, and it's exactly what we anticipated. And by the way, the top five are all here uh, in, since the year 2000. And it's not because the hurricanes are necessarily getting worse. The population has exploded, and we are in the way of the hurricanes that, well, some of them are getting worse, but it's not some major trend, by the way, just to make sure we are all on the same page. Um, ACE units overall, 2022 was kind of paltry, yet we still had Ian, right? 2023, last year, 145, and right on up, you can see these last few years. 180 was 2020, and that's interesting because we had 30 named storms in 2020, and we still only had an ACE of 180 because most of these were short-lived, and out there in the open Atlantic or what, or like Beta was very short-lived in the Gulf of Mexico as an example. But this year the ACE was big, and it meant, some of that was knocking on the door of landfalls, like Beryl did in the Windward Islands. Anyway, just really cool stats. I like looking at this stuff. Now, this is really interesting from Ryan over here at Weather Tiger. Really amazing. It was a hyperactive season as forecast, but the way it got there was very unusual. Long chunks of July and October were more active than they have been. Um, and But the peak of the season was among the all-time quietest. I mean, it was bizarre. So this is the normal distribution of past seasons through here, all these different wiggly lines, right? And this is a normal right here, this up and down deal. And then the red is what we had this year. And you can see we started off with that, oh boy, we are really in for some deep doo-doo. Like we were very worried when we had Beryl coming out of the gate like that. And there was another one behind it that failed to develop. The models were on it, then they dropped it. Maybe that was a sign that Beryl was going to be a one-off. But yeah, we had Beryl coming right out of the gate, and then this dead zone through here, relatively, compared to where we should have been. I mean, this is normal. See, we were just flat. And then, bam, at the end of September, we had this peak over here. So it shifted several weeks later. That is very interesting stuff. We'll have to see, does that portend what we're going to be looking at down the road? We think about 2018. We had Michael in October. Matthew 2016 was also October. Um, I don't know. Maybe we're shifting stuff. I mean, it's still too short of a sample size, I think, to draw any significant conclusions. Let me stop the screen share and just jump over to the YouTube real quick and see what you guys are talking about. Up to 36, so that is terrific. Good to see folks in here. Let's scroll back up. Like I said, we don't have 1,000 people on, so I can run back and see what everybody's talking about. All right. So Gaming with Trippin H1 says, even though the Atlantic may have been the star of the show of the Northern Hemisphere basin, the Westpac shares its fair of storms that made the records. Oh yeah, absolutely. The Westpac, multiple storms, extreme records that were broken by the previous record holders. Start off with a late start of the season, which makes it one of the latest starts of the season. I like it that you guys are paying attention like this. This is good. I'm just going to read through this one, and then I'll look at some of the other ones. July, Luzon got a lot of rain from the southwest monsoon. Yeah, look at the ones that was it like four in a row that went right through the Philippines. Very good points there. I like that. Dead zone was absolutely an amazing, weird anomaly. What else do we got? Going back up a little bit. Um, CJ, yeah, exactly. Beg to differ with that fear mongering. I know, right? Um, so the climate change denial, that's an interesting topic as well. I'm going to address that just a little bit. Um, yeah, the REM song "Into the World as We Know It." Better track of Helene when it came to the rainfall. Yeah, I know that the Helene's the one that just that one hurts. Kind of lost that one, right? That's a tough one. It really is. All right. So let me get back to where I can see me. So the whole climate change thing is interesting. I try to explain it to people. I didn't want to turn this into one of those conversations where I'm deviating from the main subject, but I think it's more complicated than just humans put too much CO2 in the atmosphere. CO2 holds heat, and thus the atmosphere is warming because we put too much CO2. I think it is a lot of different things, including building of impermeable surfaces, the heat island effects that all this concrete, all this building holds heat, and we have these different areas of the country that are warmer now. Look at Phoenix, how darn hot it is out there. Well, if you didn't have a city there and you just had a thermometer, would it be as hot? So, yes, there is definitely man made climate change because we are here. Anybody that denies that is truly a fool because we are here. Just my house being here and me being here giving off 98-degree heat is climate change. I'm changing it just a minute amount, but then you multiply that by 8 or 9 billion people, duh. Okay. But to say that we're the cause of everything, I do think's a little bit arrogant. All right. I do, because there's also other things that are going on. The volcano a couple of years ago, the sun, sunspots, solar activity, volcanoes in the northern parts of our latitudes. You can get something that erupts and puts a lot of ash in the atmosphere, simulating a nuclear winter, and your warming goes out the window for a decade or more. Just look at the little ice age in the 1800s. So it is, though, I think, very dangerous to just deny it and say that people are lying and that it's a hoax and squashing the science. But it's also equally as bad to say we all need to go back to the 1850s and who's going to go first? you know, the United States telling everybody, waving our finger. I don't like that either because I like what I've got. I like this comfort, but I think we just need to be smart about it. We have to adapt or we perish, and we have to use better technology to our advantage and just be smart, you know, and not be so black and white on everything. And that's my take on it. And as far as it goes to hurricanes, you know, not a lot of evidence that they are getting worse overall, but there is absolute evidence these last really since 2017 that these rapidly intensifying hurricanes in the Gulf, that's a problem. But it's still too small of a sample size to say that is because of man made climate change. There's just no way to correlate those two definitively. Like if I knock over a cup, I don't have a cup of water, but to do this demonstration, if I knock it over, that's cause and effect. I knock the water over, it spreads out on my office desk here, and I have a mess. Mark knocked the water over, made a flood on his desk. We can't absolutely say that all these bad hurricanes are because of climate change. But living next to the rivers and everything, and I'm just saying, we have these problems like what Helene did. If nobody lived there, it wouldn't have happened in terms of human impact. But we do live there. And I think we should still live in these places. We just have to do so smartly. You understand? And again, a case like Helene, we took the loss. I mean, there was nothing that could be done. You cannot evacuate the western part of North Carolina in that short amount of time. That's just not possible. And we took a huge loss on that one. That was a real bummer for, anyway, I'm tangent rambling. But interesting, though, you're right. The comment that spurred this, just straight up climate change denial is dangerous. And you have to be able to have an open mind and think about it in the bigger picture that everything that we are doing is changing the face of the planet and how it interacts with itself. It is pretty much a living organism. All right. I think it's pretty simple in that regard, and not just, it doesn't exist, it's a hoax, or every day we're all going to die tomorrow or whatever. Anyway, let's see if I can get back on track, share the screen, and get back onto what we're talking about. All right. All right. I do appreciate the this is what I like about this because we can all kind of talk together. I love it. So this is good. Um, what did we do this year? We were busy. First mission was over in this area with, I'm going to use a better color. Bear with me. Purple? Maybe I'll just use red. That'll pop pretty good. First mission this year was Beryl, and I worked with my colleague Matt from Colorado. And then the second mission, let's see if I can remember all this. Am I going to remember it all, CJ? Let's see. So that was in early July. And then the second mission for the community and our project was Debbie down here in the Cedar Key, Keaton Beach area. And I wasn't there for that. This is the first time in our project's history that someone else took the reins. That someone was Marcel, our colleague who lives up in this area of North Carolina. He went down and set up the camera systems. I'm going to draw a barrel back in, and then there is Debbie in Keaton Beach and Cedar Key. And I was finishing up my family vacation. Went up to Alaska. So then we had, after that, I went to Bermuda for Ernesto. And Mike Cornelius, our good friend, went with me on that one. Mike helps to build a lot of our back end. Um, and he went to Bermuda with me. We collected a bunch of golf balls. They're sitting right over there off the fairway. Brought a bunch back because the trees got shooken. Shooken, is that a word? It is now. The trees were shaken from the wind, and all these golf balls fell out. I kid you not. It was. I even showed it on Fox Weather. It was nuts. Like all these golf balls under all these trees. Does that happen in the U.S.? Down in Florida, are there just golf balls everywhere after all these hurricanes? I want to know, seriously. All right, anyway, after Ernesto, then we had Francine down here where somebody stole our weather station. Son of a biscuit. Still irks me. The gall of some people. Like, leave it alone if it's not yours, for Pete's sake. And robbed us of our weather data. I mean, the equipment, it's all crowdfunded. We have a generous group of people that support what we're doing. So you didn't steal from me, you stole from us. And then you stole the data. Yeah, it really sucked. But anyway, we got over it as best we could. And then after Francine, we had Helene, which was all through here, our mission stuff. And then after Helene, of course, we had Milton, which was also down here. So it was a pretty busy season for landfalls in our project. Milton actually extended further down into Punta Gorda, got to remember. Met a lot of new people along the way and set up lots of cameras, hundreds of hours of live streaming, and pretty remarkable. Lots and lots of data that we still need to go through from the cameras. And remember, video is data. Still lacking in the weather data part, though, man. That really bothers me. The one that got stolen during Francine, not much I can do about that. Thief, horrible person. But the weather data, the pressure data is easy. We set the little kestrels out easy. The wind data, much, much harder. And we're still working on it. Whether it's the instrumentation, is it accurate? Where do we sight it? Where do we put it? Is anybody going to mess with it? Stuff like that. We're really good at the live cams and the GoPros and all that stuff. Got to do better with the wind data, and that's going to be a big focus going forward. We're going to do some testing. Hopefully, a couple of wind tunnels that we have friends either Clemson or at IBHS this coming spring, and just get more wind data because I think that's important, especially in some urban settings. And I want to try to dispel this myth that you have to have the wind instruments at 10 meters out in the open. That makes no sense to me. If you're in downtown Sarasota and it's all windy down there, and CJ or whoever, he lives down in Venice area, that's why I keep saying CJ, or anybody's just driving around, you're out there in the hurricane and it's windy. What is the wind speed? Well, there's buildings and they change it. Well, it doesn't matter. The wind is still the wind. It's like in The Incredibles, too. Remember the guy, Mr. Incredible, goes, math is math. Wind is wind. It really irks me that it gets dismissed. You think about another rant. You think about, I'm thinking about it, Harvey over in Rockport. Um, Dr. Joshua Werman, Severe Weather Research. I don't know who he's with now, might still be the Center for Severe Weather Research. And his colleague Karen, I can't remember her last name, Kosiba or something like that. Also, I think a PhD. Anyway, the two of them did a presentation in 2018 at the National Tropical Weather Conference about their Doppler on wheels that they bring out, and they set it up there in Rockport for Harvey. And they had all this incredible data right inside the eye wall, and they had pictures of these vehicles that were lofted vertically, like they were, you know, top to bottom vertical, right? Instead of just flipped over, they were vertical up against some woods, and that was from these mesovortices that hit and blasted those vehicles into these trees. They were lofted vertically. I want to know what the wind was that did that, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? You see, like downtown Lake Charles during Laura, all that wind damage to the no longer existing Capital One building. What were those wind speeds? Urban wind, I think, is important, and nobody is doing anything to capture that. They're all out in the open, and I understand they want to measure the true nature of the wind field of the hurricane, but I don't live out next to some marshy area out in the open. I live here at my house, as an example. And if we get a hurricane in Wilmington, you're darn right I'm going to put an anemometer at my house because I'm going to hopefully have some good data for an insurance claim, right? Anyway, we got to work on that. And I've got some ideas. And I know Matt and CJ, oh gosh, when Mark has ideas, look out. But we need more wind data in these urban settings. Raises of hands of how many people agree. I think we do. You know, we have the video data. I want the wind data to go with it. We got to try to solve that problem. All right. So there's that. There's that little piece of Mark getting all amped up. What's next? Oh, yeah. So this is interesting. Some graphics from CJ. Look at all the landfalls in just the last 24 years. But then remember, even as I'm saying that, from 2005 until 2017, so that 12-year stretch, there was zero major landfalls, major hurricanes. And that term bothers me too. I got to talk about that. Lots of commentary from me today. Um, that's a lot, but most of them are from 2017 on. That's the other part you need to think about, right? '05, you had Katrina sitting in there, and you had Rita in there from '05, and Wilma was a major in '05. That's three. All the rest, Charlie's '04, but okay. But all the rest are since then, right? From 2017 on. 12-year gap of nothing. And then since 2017, we had Harvey, Ian, Adalia, Michael, and Helene, of course. Let me move this tool thing out of the way. Ida and Irma and Laura and Milton. I mean, Zeta. Wow. Lots and lots of major hurricanes hitting. And these are all. What's the other thing that stands out? They are all down here. There's none up here. Nothing along the East Coast. Now, certainly in 2012, Sandy was a major impact, but on the Saffir-Simpson scale, all the major hurricanes have been south of 31 degrees longitude or latitude. Not longitude, Mark, latitude. That's remarkable. All confined to the Gulf Coast. That's interesting. So is that, some kind of a trend, especially since there's been, except for 2019, we've had one every year since 2017. And we sat 2019 out, right? Dorian was close enough in the Bahamas, but even Dorian getting real close here, got all the way over to here with that eye wall, right? Almost 185 miles per hour, 200 miles east of West Palm Beach. Couldn't do it, which is fine with people over here, but this is really strange. And it's all about the steering, I guess. So that's interesting, something to ponder as we go forward, all right? Now, Florida landfalls from 2022 through 2024, starting to rack them up again, beginning to resemble a little bit like the 40s and 50s, except we are missing a bunch of East Coast landfalls. And again, think about all the people that live through here, 6 million plus. I think that's fine. Let's just not have them hit there because that's going to be terrible when that does happen. As bad as these are, your Miltons and your ones up here in the Big Bend, and Helene coming by and sending that big surge along this area, you ain't seen nothing. Bad grammar, I know, until you've gotten like a 26 hurricane today, an Andrew today, whatever, you know, just no, we don't need that. As bad as it's been, it definitely has been worse, minus the population. Category 1 Nicole in November of 2022. I was in the eye of that. But pretty remarkable how things have shaped up. All right. So we're getting towards the end of this, the last third coming up of my discussion with you. Interesting stuff here from Ben, and he's got a good point here that with this changing climate, La Nina and El Nino are not the same as they've been because the relative background state, everything's different. So this is an interesting post from Ben that we are basically in La Nina. You know, the traditional La Nina-like weather pattern should prevail through the coming period of time, like in mid to late December on through probably the beginning of next year, that the overall background state, and he talks about it in this paragraph especially, many automated INSO products, that's El Nino Southern Oscillation, rely on traditional 30-year averages for anomaly computation and calculating the probability of La Nina or El Nino developing. This technique might not tell the full story, and he's right. So he says if we head into the winter season, I caution against underestimating the influence of this impressive equatorial cold pool. Let's expand the graphic. You know, this is really interesting. Relative to the background state, it's pretty darn cold out here overall. But since everything else is so warm, it doesn't seem like it. That's why we have this term relative. So really good post there from Ben. And this one shows up too. There it is against the regular anomalies from the Coral Reef Watch here from NOAA. I mean, come on, that's a pretty good La Nina. Look how far west this extends past the date line. That's a huge basin wide almost. I mean, that's pretty close. You're almost to the maritime continent, for goodness sakes. Interesting stuff. And the Atlantic remaining warm. Not quite as deep into the deep tropics here, but pretty close overall. And the Gulf of Mexico still very warm relative to average. But look at all this cold off the Baja over here. The cold here off of Central America. This is from the gap down here. You get that gap wind. And so this can change in a heartbeat. But there's your La Nina through the Galapagos and then the very warm Gulf of Mexico. We're going to have to watch this for Winter Storm Genesis for your Miller A storms and the next spring severe weather with moisture return, even winter weather, severe weather, moisture return. Warm air holds more moisture. There's a lot of moisture available in the Gulf because it's so warm relative to average. You just put it all together and it should be a pretty interesting winter. We are just getting started. All right. What else? Oh, yes. In terms of what to look for next year, I'll pop off just for a second and go back full screen. Things I'm thinking about for 2025. Less emphasis on numbers. Yes, we will report what Colorado State's going to forecast, TSR, and NOAA. I think anybody else, maybe a couple mentions, but all right, we know it could be a very busy season. Let's just go with that and focus more and more on impacts and subseasonal forecasting. The background state looks like it's going to just remain favorable. And this is what I want to talk to Dr. Klotzbach about. I have figured Thanksgiving, I didn't want to bother him last week, but I want to get him on for just a long format discussion. Where are we going with all of this? Because let me go back to screen sharing. This just looks like it's stuck, this being that. Where it's just always warm here, and we're either in El Nino or La Nina here, but it didn't matter in 2023. We still had a pretty big season in the Atlantic Basin in terms of overall activity, the ACE and everything. We had more named storms last year. That's bonkers. We did. Again, you could add a couple this year, and maybe they will in the off season. But are we just stuck in this type of overall pattern? And if so, for how long? Climate models don't go out long enough of any reliability to get an accurate read, and is this going to hang around through next year? That's just next year, but we'll see. This is interesting stuff to look at as we go forward, because if we're stuck with this very warm Atlantic semi-permanently, whatever that means, um, and we're just always going to have busy seasons. And to that end, are we in the same type of pattern that we're just going to get all these Gulf landfalls? I saw Jeff Berardelli down in Tampa was talking about that with, I can't remember who the scientist was, but some massive increase in Gulf activity is forecast over the next several decades. And maybe we're starting to see that. I don't know. Again, I think we're still in too small of a sample size, but since 2017, you can make the argument. And the East Coast hurricanes have all become all but extinct, So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting stuff to think about as we go forward. All right, go back to sharing the screen once more as we begin to wrap this up. All right, so the climate models, this is just one of them. This is CFS V2. Pretty sharp drop coming up, apparently, and we dig pretty deep into La Nina, and that's what Ben was talking about. And that puts us into 2025, and then we stay cold neutral. And that, somebody asked me what that means. So there's your neutral, which is 0. And then this is the cold side of it. This will be the warm side. So positive, negative, cold side. And most of the guidance generally indicating not an El Nino next year so far. And these have gotten pretty good too, these climate models, generally speaking. I think the euro is always going to show something like that. By the way, I don't even look at it anymore for INSO. CFS does generally pretty well, and then you look at the consensus from CPC and all that good stuff. But then you also got to, like I say, look out the window. And our version of that is this Hofmolar diagram from Dr. Michael Ventress' website. And if you know, you know. Look at all of this. I think we'll use black to highlight it. All that easterly, holy mackerel. Man, all that easterly flow between now and like mid-December. Goodness gracious. That is absolutely going to reinforce that La Nina. You got a little bit of westerly wind in November that we saw, but that's the past. Here's where we are now. These strong easterlies, these are anomalous. This is your anomalous flow at 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. Um, and the stronger the blues and purples, the stronger those easterly anomalies are. And the reds and whatnot, those are your westerly winds. So easterly means they are coming from the east. Westerly means coming from the west. You understand? So your zonal wind anomalies down in the equatorial region, very strongly favoring a La Nina signal as we get through December. We'll have to just see if that hangs on into next year. All right. Let me just do another quick check of the YouTube chat, and then I'm going to wrap things up with some looks ahead for next year. All right. Now, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. And again, he says, I agree with this climate change sentiment. I'm not right. It's just my thoughts on it. It's just more complex than that. What else do we got? Yeah, recording mesovortices. I'm down. Yeah, that would be really neat. Got to figure out how to do it. All right. So Dennis Walker, no wonder your views are so low. I know, right? Just horrible. Yep, that's all right. I get to do this full time though. Views or no views, doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad I get to do it. Um, what else? Anemometers everywhere, especially urban areas. Yep, 2019 would have been a 200 billion. Yeah, no kidding. 200 miles made all the difference there. All right, let's wrap this up. Get over to looking ahead to 2025. Winter weather. We will be covering that, of course. My favorite is the lake effect snow. And I know you're like, well, dude, you should have gone up to, well, I had Thanksgiving and family, and sometimes that's more important, especially when you've been gone as long as I was this year for other stuff, hurricanes and severe weather. And I was like, yep, there'll be more lake effect snow. Trust me. But yeah, lake effect, nor'easters, that kind of thing, especially the ones off of Massachusetts, like Scituate and Marshfield and those areas. Then spring severe and hail project stuff for next year. We will be working out in the field, especially this hail stuff. Really fascinating. There's a couple of big projects as well. One of them is called Ice Chip. No, I'm not making that up. It's a long acronym, whatever it means, those letters. Um, so the hail project and some interesting things for next year's severe weather season. Got some ideas on how to document tornadoes that we're working on secretly, because that's a very competitive corner of the market, isn't it? Yes, it is. Then we got a few ideas to maybe contribute to learning more about tornado genesis and that kind of thing. Um, and then next year's hurricane season, that'll be here in less than 6 months, of course. And again, this part right here, hurricane season, it'll just be what it is. I fully expect another active season unless the Atlantic turns cold and we develop an El Nino. I think it really comes down to that. Just expect it to be active and apparently expect a lot of action in and around the Gulf until we see reason to believe anything different. All right. And then the second most favorite of the off-season stuff, honest to goodness, is monsoon season. How I love the desert Southwest during monsoon season. Ah, I can't wait for that. I missed it this year, was just busy with other stuff, and it wasn't real prevalent, unfortunately for them. But yeah, we'll be doing all of that over the next few months, and we hope you'll join us throughout uh, that off season. Like I said, we don't shut the lights off and go away and we'll see you next June. No, 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 no. We're very busy. We'll be working on refining our camera systems, testing new things. And that's the big reason why I like to be able to do these other off-season excursions is that we get to test things that we normally wouldn't get to do. I can put stuff out in my backyard. I don't have cows, but until the cows come home, that expression, I say that to my daughter. What cows? Um, but it's not the same as field testing in a big nor'easter or even lake effect. These are almost like excuses to be able to get out and cover other weather while we test certain things. And that really does make a big difference in the long run. All right. And anything else still working on Hurricane Highway episodes. Talked about this last week too, I think. Kind of just ran into a roadblock of creativity, and I don't know, when you do creative work, sometimes it just comes to a screeching halt. And there was several months, many months, that I was working on the Zeta episode way back from 2020, our season 2 of the series, and I got about maybe 60-70% through, and I just didn't feel it. Like it was just not going anywhere. I didn't like the pacing. I wasn't sure what to do next. And I just let it sit. And then we got busy this year, severe weather, hail stuff, hurricane season, you name it. And I just kind of, I'll worry about it later. And I went and revisited it a few weeks ago. I tried to pick it up. All right, what can I do with this? And it just stunk. Like, I don't like this. So I scrapped it, the whole Zeta episode, and I started over. And boy, oh boy, has it made a difference. And it's almost done. So to that end, my goal, I don't know, people are not sitting around waiting for it like the next season of The Last of Us or whatever. I understand that. But we do have a good chunk of people that appreciate the original content that I produce, and I like it. It's a good lasting legacy. I do the music for it. I do the whole project, shoot the interviews, edit it together. It's a wonderful way to just have something on the shelf, so to speak, that'll be there forever. All right. So to that end, I fully anticipate finally getting the Zeta episode out before mid-December. Yay! Like I said, I restarted it, brand new, fresh look at it overall. The pacing's better. Mixing some AI music with my original music, which has been a big help as well, because it kind of sparks creativity with the AI stuff. And anyway, it's coming along. And then we do Ada. I'll work on Ada, and that'll wrap up season 2 of our Hurricane Highway series. And then I'll start working on season 3, which covers the year 2021. That wasn't quite as busy a year as 2020, thankfully. So maybe I'll get through that in short order as well. And then on our Patreon, that keeps growing, and we do appreciate that. Over there, we do have our podcast series called Stories from the Hurricane Highway, which is a long format, just me talking and sometimes interviews with people that have, the cast of characters that I've run into over these decades. So we do have that on our Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we, as I said last week, you can give the gift of Patreon now. So if you are a patron and you want to gift a Patreon to somebody, you can. And I'll put the link to that on Patreon and on our Discord. And if you want to join our Patreon, you should. It's great. It's a good community. We're growing there. And that's a good, solid foundation of supporters from all over the world that allows me to do this full time. All right. I remember it was Arthur, 2014. Jesse and I were on the side of the road getting a drone ready to launch, like one of the first years we had drones. And we were in the Outer Banks, and this lady drove by real angry. We weren't bothering her. She's just an angry person. And she hollers out the window, "Get a job!" And I was like, those social media things like the videos and who's going to tell her? I'm very proud that this is my job, and it's because of you folks. It really is. If she only knew, if she only knew, that is his job. But yeah, we do it because of you guys, and it's just great. So I appreciate you letting me hopefully inform you and not scare you too bad this past hurricane season. I should get like a big Viking hat and just look all angry and whatever and just scare people for severe weather. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe we just need to switch it all around and just become this angry mob of shouting weather freaks to get everybody's attention. Nah, I don't think that's a good idea either. All right, let me wrap this up before I just completely go off the deep end. Isn't this fun? See, this is better than just a not scripted, but when I do my regular update, it's just right next, tab. It's like I'm doing a newscast, and I got to be pretty straightforward and to the point. This more is just like if we were all hanging out together, this would be so much fun. That's why I like this. All right. All right. Not too much else in the chat, so that's fine. That's good. 45 people to wrap this up. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to seriously share these videos, tell people about what we're doing. It does help us grow. Views are important. More important to me are people. The views are just a number. I like the people, and there's people behind these screen names, and there's people behind those 45 watching now, right? And I appreciate that very, very, very much. I really do. And we'll keep going. All right. This isn't the end. This is just the wrap up of today's video. All right. So look, I'll have an afternoon video for you later today, just kind of summarizing this long thing in a much more concise manner. And we'll take a look at some winter weather stuff and whatever. And we'll get on with the off season and see what happens. All right. So let me get ready to hopefully bow out gracefully. There's the video. We'll leave the audio up for a minute. And I'm going to go back to sharing the screen so I can get to my exit strategy. Also going to work on a better way to do this. A couple people have suggested using StreamYard. Yeah, always trying to make things better. Look, bottom line, thank you for tuning in all hurricane season long. All these years you might have been with me, or if you're just brand new, doesn't matter. It's great to have you. I am Mark Sudduth from all of us at the Hurricane Track community. Thank you for watching today's morning discussion and rant session or whatever. We'll do it again next Monday. And until then, we'll do a few videos in the afternoons and just tell you what's up when something's on my mind. And you guys have a good rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in.